So it's good to be with you. Sorry I couldn't join you for the meditation. As was mentioned, I'm actually on retreat starting this morning, which the morning session finished at 11:30, so at least I was able to get here for this. So this week we're going to, we're going to be talking about or looking at the Buddha-Nusati practice, but actually we're going to be doing it more than talking about it. So I haven't got a huge amount to say, but I'll just put it into some sort of context, if you like. So Buddha-Nusati, it means recollection of the Buddha in its most straightforward. It's a very traditional practice, probably started off certainly during the time that the Buddha was teaching, when the Buddha was alive and teaching, and as a recollection of the qualities of a wise one, wise being an epithet for an enlightened one, as the supremely wise person. And we have the Buddha's followers reflecting on the qualities of an enlightened mind, really, what it would be like to have that enlightened mind. And obviously, as the Buddha himself was the embodiment of the ultimate in those qualities, in that wisdom of the enlightened mind, it evolved into recollecting the Buddha himself, bringing the Buddha to mind. And this was probably going on before the Buddha's parinirvana, before he passed away. To a certain extent. It forms part of a larger set of practices which included recollecting the Dharma, recollecting the Sangha, and in some instances there were even wider sets, so they would recollect ethical behavior, recollect generosity, and so on. In a way, it's just practices which brought to mind what well, the purpose of the spiritual life was to develop these qualities. So by holding them in mind, one could develop them. In later teachings, Mahayana teachings, obviously after the Buddha's parinirvana, when physically he was no longer around, these developed more into visualization practices, typically visualizing the Buddha or the archetypal Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in their archetypal forms rather than the historical Buddha. And out of those visualization practices developed the sadhana practices, which we do as order members. And yeah, it all has its roots, I think, in this recollection of the qualities of the enlightened mind. So why do we do it? Why do we have this practice? And I think really it comes down to, well, what are we doing when we recollect the Buddha? What is the Buddha to us? We have this this figure. We have it all around us. I'm sitting here, and slightly to my left, you can't see it, but is my shrine with a figure of the Buddha sitting on it, and a large image of the Buddha's enlightenment on the wall behind it. You would normally see that, but I've turned my camera around today. Simply because, yeah, I do like to sometimes sit and look at my shrine rather than sit with my back to it. But so we have these images everywhere. We have the large rupa at the Buddhist center, which we try to bring to our online meetings in as many ways as we can, incorporating that image. And that image, as we often say, is, well, our relationship to that is that it's a reminder of what we're practicing for. It's an embodiment of the ideal of enlightenment, of human enlightenment. And we are practicing ultimately to become enlightened. So that figure is a reminder to us, the rupa on the shrine. It's not there because we bow down to a carved image. It's there as a reminder to us of why we're doing what we're doing. And I think it's the same with the Buddha Nusati practice, the recollection of the Buddha, in that really what we're turning our mind towards is ultimately what we wish to become. So we're bringing to mind the qualities of the Buddha, not simply because the Buddha was this figure that we worship from afar, as it were, and we do worship and hold in reverence, but something always separate and distant to us, but that the Buddha represents what we aspire to become. Those qualities that the Buddha has are qualities that we aspire to embody, to have in ourselves. And so by recollecting the Buddha, by bringing the Buddha to mind, through bringing his qualities to mind, what we're very much doing is getting in touch with our own aspirations for what we wish to be. Speaks about this when he talks about the imaginal faculty, and he speaks about when we imagine an image, ultimately what we're doing, and he's talking about transcendental images here, ultimately what we're doing is simply imagining ourselves. So when we recollect the Buddha, we're really recollecting what we could be. We're bringing ourselves into that. So I think that's an important point to remember when doing this practice, that it's, we're not doing something simply as a ritual for the sake of doing a ritual. It's not just an empty practice. It is very much about connecting with our own aspirations for what we want to be. I've got a little quote here, courtesy of Ratnaguna's book on the art of reflection, and he quotes Vajrayaratna Mahathira, so a Theravadan monastic, who wrote a book called Buddhist Meditation. And in this book, he says this about the Buddha Nusati, the recollection of the Buddha practice. In the mind of him who meditates on the recollection of the Buddha, the thoughts arise repeatedly with reference to the Buddha's virtue. With the consequent exaltation of mind, full of joy and gladness, he becomes increasingly strengthened in faith and devotion. He realizes the Buddha in his inner being and constantly feels that he is in the presence of the Buddha. There arises within him a feeling of certain intimacy with the Buddha, for he keeps his mind constantly identified with the virtues of the Buddha, so that his body, as it were, inhabited by a mind continually recollecting this virtue, and thus it becomes worthy of adoration, as if it were a shrine. So by constantly recollecting or referring to the Buddha's virtue, the qualities of the Buddha, it has an effect on our mind. That he says, that we consequently have a mind full of joy and gladness. So it's a way of developing positive emotion by reflecting on the Buddha. And a way of strengthening faith and devotion. So faith here, of course, we talk about faith in the Buddhist sense. So we're talking about Shraddha, that trust and confidence in the Buddha, trust and confidence in the Buddha's enlightenment, trust and confidence in the path leading to that enlightenment, and trust and confidence in our own potential to become enlightened. And that's what we're talking about when we speak of faith and devotion, a commitment to that path, a commitment to following the Buddha. And by developing this feeling for the Buddha within us, feeling ourselves in the presence of the Buddha, feeling, as he puts it, an intimacy with the Buddha, then it keeps our mind focused, it keeps our mind fixed on what it is that we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve. And the body, by being inhabited by a mind that is fixed in that way on the Buddha, that is constantly with the Buddha, he says the body becomes worthy of adoration as if it were a shrine. I particularly like that, thinking that that this body is a shrine to the Buddha, or to the ideal of enlightenment that the Buddha embodies. So very, very positive reasons for doing this practice, very much engaging with our, if you like, with our inner potential. We're not engaging with something that's out there and separate and distant from us, but we're engaging with our own inner potential to become as the Buddha. With another little quote, this one is a little bit longer, I apologize for that, but this one's from a later period, so this comes very much from a Mahayana perspective. So this is from Zhi, the 6th century Chinese meditator and scholar, and comes from a series of lectures he gave called Great Calming and Contemplation. And he says this: in the state of dhyana, when our minds and bodies are quiet and tranquil, then all of a sudden there comes into the memory a recollection of the inconceivable merits and purity of all the Buddhas. As soon as we are dwelling in such remembrances of the Buddha's transcending attainments and merits, we feel springing up in our dhyana minds the development of a spirit of respect for all sentient life and a feeling of fraternity with them. We feel unfolding powers of samadhi, and a sense of joy and bliss pervades both body and mind that wraps us in a feeling of righteousness and safety. At such times, we are never disturbed by the appearance of any bad developments nor evil manifestations. When we retire from our dhyana practice, our body seems light and active, and we feel so confident in the possession of good qualities that we expect everyone whom we meet will respect us and respond to our goodwill. So again, we have here Zhi bringing out this aspect of joy and of connection with all sentient life through recollecting the Buddha. We recollect the Buddha's compassion, the Buddha's connection with others, and we feel that within us by holding these qualities in mind. So a sense of joy and bliss pervading us. And we're never disturbed by the appearance of bad developments, so that sense of equanimity that so characterized the Buddha's engagement with people. So some very strong recommendations there, I think, for engaging in the practice of recollection of the Buddha. So what exactly do we do? How do we do the practice? And really, there's no set formula for doing it. I was looking around. I mean, I know how I've been shown it and I know how I do it, but looking at it, there's no one way of doing this practice of recollection of the Buddha. It is quite simply a case of just bringing to mind the Buddha's qualities. And there are various ways of doing that. But really, it's, what we need to do is just simply sit down quietly and turn our minds towards the qualities of the Buddha. It's not really a meditation practice, it's more a reflection and contemplation practice. I guess one could do it in a meditative way, in the sense that it's helpful to be quiet, to be sitting somewhere that's where we can be at peace for the allotted amount of time, and just turning our mind to the qualities of the Buddha. This morning we're going to be using, I'm going to be using a sutta from the Sutta Nipata. It's called the Purabheda Sutta. The Buddha was asked a question, what are the qualities of a man who is calm? Calm in this context, really referring to someone who had achieved the state of enlightenment. And the Buddha replies with what he saw as the qualities of someone who had achieved this state. So in a way, you could say the Buddha was describing himself in answering the question. But it's very useful to have these particular qualities brought out in this very short little sutta, which we can use to reflect on. And when we do the practice, I'm just going to read out the the sutta, a verse at a time, and really just ask you to allow that to settle into your consciousness. You may like to reflect on, well, what would it be like if I had these qualities? What would it feel like to possess these particular attributes? Not in a very discursive way, not in a way necessarily even looking for an answer, but just positing the question and just allowing these to settle into our mind. So I'm going to lead us through the practice now. And just to start off with, I'll read a little bit from Pingia's praises, because I couldn't let the opportunity go by without reading a bit of Pingia's praises. Yeah, which is another excellent sutta for recollecting the Buddha, by the way, but it's a bit long for this morning. So I'm just going to read a little bit from it just to set the scene. And then I'll just read out the verses from the Purabheda Sutta. And if we just sit with those, just allow them to settle in. And then there'll be some time at the end. We'll probably have 15 minutes or so where we can perhaps then reflect on our reflections, as it were, in our groups. So you can sit in meditation with your eyes closed, or you can just sit. I've got an image which I'll put up on the screen which might be helpful, which you can sit and look at if you wish whilst reflecting. So just settling ourselves in, making sure that we're comfortable. Just turning our awareness inwards. And just allowing our mind to settle on the Buddha, maybe using the image to help us do that. Perhaps having a sense of sitting bathed in the golden radiance of the Buddha's aura. A quote from Pingia's praises. And this is Pingia recounting his experience of the Buddha to his former teacher. I see him with my mind as if with my eye. Being vigilant day and night, Brahman, I pass the night revering him. For that very reason, I think there is no staying away from him. My faith and rapture, mind and mindfulness do not stay away from the teaching of Gautama. In whatever direction the one of great wisdom goes, in that very direction I bow down. I am old and of feeble strength. For that very reason, my body does not go there. I go constantly on a mental journey, for my mind, Brahman, is joined to him. The Buddha Nusati practice. He has no anger, no fear and no pride. Nothing disturbs his composure, and nothing gives him cause for regret. He is the wise man who is restrained in speech. He does not conceal anything, and there is nothing he holds on to. Without acquisitiveness or envy, he remains unobtrusive. He has no disdain or insult for anyone. He is not a man who is full of himself, or a man who is addicted to pleasure. He is a man who is gentle and alert, with no blind faith. He shows no aversion to anything. He is not a person who works because he wants something. If he gets nothing at all, he remains unperturbed. There is no craving to build up the passion to taste new pleasures. His mindfulness holds him poised in a constant even-mindedness where arrogance is impossible. He makes no comparisons with the rest of the world as superior, inferior, or equal. Because he understands the way things are, he is free from dependency, and there is nothing he relies on. For him, there is no more craving to exist or not to exist. This is what I call a man who is calmed. It is a man who does not seek after pleasure, who has nothing to tie him down, who has gone beyond the pull of attachment. It is a man without sons, a man without wealth, a man with nothing in him that he grasps at as his, and nothing in him that he rejects as not his. He is a man who receives false criticisms from other people, but who remains undisturbed and unmoved by their words. I see him with my mind as if with my eye. Being vigilant day and night, Brahman, I pass the night revering him. For that very reason, I think there is no staying away from him. My faith and rapture, mind and mindfulness do not stay away from the teaching of Gautama. In whatever direction the one of great wisdom goes, in that very direction I bow down. I am old and of feeble strength. For that very reason, my body does not go there. I go constantly on a mental journey, for my mind, Brahmin, is joined to him